Hi, guys, welcome back to my channel. So, I read this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear when I was in a complete slump in my life. This phase, I ended up in a perpetual cycle of negative habits, which was literally like staying up extremely late, waking up late, having nothing to do, just being lethargic. Because when you're freshly out of college, you have nothing going on and you're just figuring out things for yourself. And, I ended up in this slump. And where I had nothing going on, and I was just like ended up in a very miserable cycle of just, negative habits, which is not good for me and which was not good for me as well because my health started deteriorating. And that's when I had like the biggest wake up call, like, you need to get your crap together, you know what I mean? And that's when I was like, I need to do something about this. What do I do? And I see a lot of people from my generation, especially the Gen Z kids, struggle with this so much. Even as a psychology graduate myself, I understand attention spans. I understand how, you know, it's difficult to make changes in your life, how neuroplasticity works, and I understand all of these things. And that's why I was just like, I need to figure out realistic ways how you can make changes in your life. Because if you're habitual to a set of, negative habits, how can you break that pattern and get into new ones? For example, if you want to get into, sports, athletics, or you want to work out or whatever it is, it's a no-brainer that you're going to go to a gym, or you're going to, you know surround yourself with athletes, or go to a ground and just, start running and things like that. So the same way, when you want to make certain changes in your life, it's very important to create your environment also in such a way that it does the heavy lifting for you. When James Clear talks about clearing up your space in this book, he's not only saying, oh yeah, you definitely need to craft your, surroundings like that. He's specifically talking about environmental design, the way you are going to design your own environment in a way that, you can easily get things done. Suppose you want to study, you make sure your study table is clean, and your study room and everything is not full of trash, because you'll definitely not feel like studying, when that happens. If you're planning of inculcating a habit of reading, you make sure to keep a book by your bedside every day so you can read. You can just pick it up, and you make sure to leave your phone in another room, because the second you have your phone in your room, you're just gonna keep scrolling on there. And the same way, even on your phone, if you're addicted to your phone, what do? You know that you're addicted to social media, so you end up deleting social media. That's what he's essentially saying, is craft your environment in a way that it promotes, you know habitual changes in your life. Don't make it that difficult, make it easy for yourself, which leads me to my next point. And he emphasizes a lot about that in this book, because making the task easier will automatically help you to change habits in your life. The second you set unrealistic goals for yourself, you won't be able to achieve it. It will seem too far off the bat for you. And psychologically also, humans do work like that. The second you feel like it's too difficult, you already give up. And that's the kind of, you know goals that you need to set for yourself. Make the task easier for yourself, no matter what the task is. Let's say you want to change your habits when it comes to fitness, and you want to get back on track, and you set this unrealistic goal that I am going to work out for 1 hour, when you don't even have the habit of working out. Now that is unrealistic, and you are not going to end up doing it. If you do it, well and good for you, but all I'm saying, it's physically impossible to, like, have no habit of doing it, suddenly get back to it. It's not going to last very long. So every time you set a goal for yourself, you're like, oh, I'm going to work out for maybe, like, 1 hour. Just try to make it even more easier for yourself. Forget about 1 hour, let me just work out for 15 minutes first. If I achieve that, I can go ahead and do more. So make sure you break down the task and make it easier, because when you tell yourself, oh, this is easy, you will do it, you will end up achieving it. The same way, if you've set a goal for yourself that I'm going to read, 3 books this week, you may not achieve it, because it's very, like, unrealistic for a person who doesn't even read, you know what I mean? So start with, okay, I will read 10 pages today, or I will read, 15 pages tomorrow, or something like that. You need to make your task a little more easier for yourself, so you can just push through it every day. The second you make the task easy, you can stay consistent with it. And consistency matters when it comes to making long term changes. This is where people fail. You set unrealistic goals for yourself that I'm going to start working out, I'll do this, I will work out for 2 hours, I'll run 5k, I will read 10 books and things like that. Just unrealistic goals. It is inevitable that it's going to make you second guess yourself, and you'll also find it very difficult to follow through with that. And it's very important to make it realistic and easy so you can stay consistent with these habits and make changes for the long run, because what matters is if you can keep up with those habits. The second you keep up with those habits is when you can actually make a difference in your life, because small things add up. Small droplets will also add up into like a bigger bucket of water as well. So the same way you make small changes in your life, it will lead to a bigger change. Essentially, that is what James Clear is talking about in this book. You don't have to make a task so difficult for yourself. Make it easy, but follow through with it. And that's how you make change in your life. If you're someone who's trying to lose weight, start with walking. You can't just be like, I'm going to run for 30 minutes today, I'm going to jog for 30 minutes today, which is also, it's fine if you are capable of doing it. But for someone who doesn't even work out or anything like that, and you want to lose weight, you start with the small things first, and that's how you get to the bigger ones, and that's how you make the bigger changes, because then you build capacity. When you build capacity, you can make changes in your life. So last but not the least, this is one of my favorite points and highlights from this entire book, which is identity shift and identity visualization, which essentially says no matter what your current situation is right now, make sure you visualized a future version of yourself that you want to achieve and that you want to be, in terms of the way that you look, what you want to achieve in terms of your career, whatever it is, whatever goals you have in life. Make sure you start inculcating habits in your day to day life, tiny habits that will eventually add up to the person that you want to be in the future. He's just saying in this book that your self image needs to be very strong. The way that you want to be, the rigid personality, whatever it is, you just need to make sure that your habits slowly add up in a way that you will become that person. And it's inevitable that you are going to become that person. So it just speaks about how your self image needs to be extremely strong, regardless of what your current situation is right now and who you are currently. Regardless of that, you just need to inculcate tinier habits in your life, everyday life, to, become that person. It's going to sound very cliche when you talk about, self image, this, identity shift and all of that, but it's very important, because I've seen a lot of people do all this vision boards and all of that, but they don't follow up with that. And that's what I'm trying to say. In your head itself, suppose you want to become an athlete and you are just visualizing, oh, how am I going to run 8k, or how am I going to run this marathon, and whatever it is, the time, the endurance and all of that. He's not talking about that. He's saying what are the habits of an athlete, the identity, what is the identity of an athlete and how do they behave, and what are the habits that they inculcate. An athlete will not eat certain types of foods. An athlete will not stay up too late. An athlete has certain kinds of habits. It's not only the outcome. In this book, James Clear is essentially saying you should not only focus on the outcome, you should also focus on the intrinsic factors, where you're just like, what does a person who identifies themselves as an athlete do? What are their habits? Inculcate those habits in your life and identify with those habits, and that is what makes you that person. And when you follow through, you will become that kind of a person. So make sure your identity and your self image is extremely strong, and what your goal is and what you want to achieve in life, and that's how you make changes in your life. All in all, the main key points of this entire book, so that you can genuinely make changes in your life, adds up to three main points, which is clear up your space, craft and design an environment where you can actually push yourself to achieve that or task that you have. Second thing, make the task easier, because when you make the task easier, it is highly achievable and you can also stick to it and you can be consistent. Third thing, have a strong self image and visualize the kind of person that you are. Focus on the identity, not the outcome. Always focus on the kind of person that you want to become and the kind of habits that person will have. Focus on the habits that the person with that identity will have. And you can eventually make a realistic change in your life. So, yeah, so make sure you inculcate these things in your life and you can definitely make a change in your life. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be back with more videos.